Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming. It's a tremendous chus as we're all getting ready and moving quicker and quicker towards Chag HaGeula. The Yontif of Pesach is coming upon us this year. This is a very special way to prepare for the holiday of Pesach. We are privileged tonight to have with us Rav Yisrael Deren. Rav Yisrael Deren is the founder, along with his wife, Rebbetzin Vivi Deren, who I see is on also, and we welcome her. And I hope really one day I get to meet the two of you in person. The Derens are the founder and director of the Chabad of Fairfield County in Connecticut. They've spent over 40 years and dedicated over 40 years of their lives to Klal Yisrael and the Jewish people in Fairfield County, sent as shluchim of the Rebbe himself. Rabbi Deren has extensive experience in all areas of Jewish community service and has been actively involved in teaching a wide range of audiences from the university level, adult education, to all types of Jews. He really represents in so many different ways the quintessential leader and Rav, lover of all of Jews in Klal Yisrael. And we really, really appreciate him for taking his time out tonight to come and share Torah with us. That is first, but the Tanai was that if he comes, this is a Tanai that one day he will come and join us in the shul too, Be'ezrat Hashem, for Shabbos, one of these days when hopefully we can come back to scholar residences and we get to meet him and Farbregen together, Be'ezrat Hashem. The shir tonight is sponsored by our dear friend and family member, by Rebecca and Ari Ashkenaz in memory of Dr. David Thaler, who enjoyed learning and sharing new Pesach ideas each and every year. But it wasn't only that. Specifically, tonight the topic is the Kaballah of Pesach. The Kaballah of Pesach, Dr. Thaler, through his writings, and as they used to send out Divrei Torah every single week, and his children still do every single Friday. He explored as he got older and wiser, and he always was a wise man. Got deeper and deeper into Torah, exploring not just the shitchios or the outer layer of the Torah, but would throughout his life get deeper and deeper into the pneumius of the Torah itself. So it's only appropriate tonight that the shir is dedicated in loving memory and Ligoi Neshama of Dr. Thaler, who lived a life of Kabbalah in so many different ways, lived a life of embracing and loving every Jew, and always looked to deepen and enhance his siddharim and to create an array of Torah that he can always share with his family and all those that were connected to him, his friends and neighbors as well. So it's B'kavod Gadol, B'kavod Rav, that we have Torah from Rabbi Yisrael Deren. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi Markowitz. I have to confess that every time I hear an introduction like that, and believe me, I enjoy hearing it, but my only regret is this. I quote my favorite senator once said, "My only regret is that my parents weren't here to hear it." My father would have loved it, and my mother would have believed it. Now, I have to tell you that in the past, not quite 40 or 50 years, but certainly in the past 20 years, my wife and I have accepted speaking engagements really all over the world. And sometimes as often as twice a month, and sometimes as far as Australia or Russia. And people would ask me, why do you do it? I mean, it's like all that traveling. And I told them the absolute truth. I do the speaking because of the miles. And now in the age of COVID and Zoom, sort of one of the greatest incentives that I had seems to have disappeared. I just sit right here in front of the screen and talk. But I want to say thank you to you for this opportunity, because in truth, there's another reason why I accept speaking engagements. It's because every time I need to prepare a talk, certainly a class, but even a talk, I learn a lot. And I just simply in becoming prepared, as it were, for this year, there are things that I learned that I never knew before. As for instance, the very title, which was, as you know, good and well, off the cuff, So what should we call it? Then the Kaballah of Pesach. Right. I figured I'd figure it out eventually. But then at some point I had to sit down and figure it out. What is the quote? The Kaballah of Pesach. And I don't think that you expect me to teach you magic tonight or sort of how to levitate, although I can in a different class. But then what is the Kaballah, as it were? I looked up the word. Do you know that the word kabel, to receive, which is a word that we know, I mean, Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai, it's sort of almost part of our DNA. It appears in the Torah in one context only, and seemingly nothing to do with receiving. The word in the Torah, it's in last week's parsha. V'halulaos makbilos isha elachota. The loops were makbilot, translated as corresponding, one to the other. One side of the panel had loops that connected it to the other panel. Why? Because they were makbilos, they were corresponding. So in effect then, from the Torah perspective, Kabbalah, in essence, we're talking about corresponding. And that fits right into what we classically understand as Kabbalah, the received wisdom that's part of Pnimius Torah, the inner element of Torah. But at its core, what Kabbalah does is show how the different levels of, let's call it reality, the perceived reality, the understood reality, the felt reality, the spiritual reality, the celestial reality, they are all makbilot. They correspond one to the other. And so that when we sit down and do a mitzvah, or stand and do a mitzvah, or learn, it's not just at our level of reality, but in fact, there are many other deeper levels of reality that we can be in touch with. And in fact, that's what really enriches our experience. And so what I'd like to do tonight is to take one of those mitzvahs that we're going to be having in Pesach and explain the Kabbalah of that mitzvah. In the literal sense, what Kabbalah has to say about it, but at a deeper level, how it corresponds to our reality. So,
has very little DNA, very little like genetic code. So we have, let's say, 6 billion pairs of base pairs in our DNA. COVID's got 30,000 base pairs. So you're
Okay, we muted that person. Rabbi Deren, please
I
unmute
got it.
yourself.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I'm good. So, which mitzvah that I'll take? Matzah. And I want to explain matzah in terms of what it really is. It's more than just something that is awesomely expensive. And Dr. Twersky, Olav Sholem, he once said, I think that people ought to eat ice cream every single day. I think Chazal should say that there's a mitzvah to eat ice cream every day. And he says, simple logic. He said, the first time we were redeemed, the Eibishter found us eating matzah, and we were stuck for matzah now for 8 days, for now 3,000 years, eating matzah for 8 days. He says, imagine if Mashiach shows up and we're eating salami. Can you imagine what 8 days of salami would be like? Albeit ice cream, that would be amachaya. But that's what we do. We eat matzah for 8 days. What is it about this matzah? What does this matzah mean? Yeah, we all know the story about the dough that they were in such a hurry and the dough didn't rise and they had to eat it flat. There needs to be a heck of a lot more to make it the mitzvah that it is. So let me begin by taking a look at the Haggadah and seeing what the Haggadah has to say about matzah. It's right at the very beginning of the Haggadah. We all are familiar with it introduces Magid, the main part of the Haggadah. And what does it tell us? Right at the very beginning, after we finish with breaking and the Yachatz, and now we're at Magid. Okay, we're starting the story. How do we start the story? We either pick up or point to the matzah and we say, Hey lach ma'anya di'achala v'sana be'ar Mitzrayim. This is the bread of poverty that our ancestors ate in Egypt. Kol dichvin yeseh v'yechol. Whoever is hungry, let them come and eat with us. Kol ditzrich, whoever is needy, yeseh v'yifzach, let them come and join our Seder. Hashata hacha, l'shana haba be'arad Yisrael. This year we're here, next year we're in Eretz Yisrael. Hashata avdin, this year we are slaves. L'shana haba b'nei charen, next year we are free people. Now, starting from the bottom up, it seems to be a pretty bizarre way to start the Haggadah and the Festival of Liberation by announcing that we're slaves. I thought the whole reason we're sitting here is because we're free. But let's leave that for a moment and take a look at the entire thing within context. Hey lachma anya, this is the poor bread. What does it mean? It's the poor bread. Now, yeah, in the halachic meaning of poor bread is that it's only made out of flour and water and nothing else. You can't add spices, you can't add juice, it's just flour and water, no taste. But, so that makes it poor, it makes it tasteless. And what difference does it make if it does have a taste or it doesn't have a taste? And why underscore that part of it? The achala avasana ba'ara de Mitzrayim, that our ancestors ate in Egypt. A problematic phrase that we will underscore in a little bit. But then we go on and we say that anybody who's hungry or is needy should come and eat with us. Anybody, this year we're here, next year in Yerushalayim. What does that have to do with the lachma anya? What does that have to do with this poor bread? And what does it mean? Anybody who's hungry, let them come and eat with us. Anybody who's needy, let them come and have Pesach with us. I mean, those are noble sentiments, but seemingly entirely misplaced. We come home from shul, we close the door, we gather around the table, we prepare the Seder plates, we make Kiddush, and then we go wash, and then we come back and we sit down, and we have the karpas, and then the yachatz, and then we make an announcement. Oh, by the way, anybody who's hungry, let them come and join us at our Seder. I mean, that's a wonderful sentiment that you should have expressed in shul 2 hours ago, or preferably downtown a day ago. Who are you inviting here? Everybody who's here is here, and who isn't here doesn't hear you talking. And in fact, the commentaries point out that the reason this, among all of the things said in the Haggadah, is in Aramaic is so that everybody should understand it. Wait a minute, everybody should understand it. We're all here to say there's nothing to understand. We're here. So what does this have to, and what does this have to do with the matzah? And then finally, again, what does being in Yerushalayim next year have to do with our sitting here this year? And why is it that we underscore that here and now? So that's our first look at matzah from the perspective of the Haggadah. But it's not the only. We, in fact, after we go through the entire Haggadah, we come back to the matzah. And we say, at the very end of the Haggadah, matzah zu shana ochlim al shumach. Why do we eat this matzah that we're about to eat in another couple of minutes, thankfully? Al shum shalei hispik b'tzeka shalavasenu lahachmitz, that the dough that our ancestors took out of Egypt had no time to become chametz, it had no time to rise. Ad shenigla aleihem melech malchei hamlochim hakadosh baruch hu golem, until Hashem came out and redeemed them, revealed himself to them and redeemed them. And then the proof text, they baked the dough that they'd taken out of Mitzrayim into matzah. Okay, let's parse that. First words, matzah zushon ochlim al shumah. Why do we eat this matzah? Ad shaloi hispik b'tzeket shalavasenu lahachmitz, because the dough had no time to rise until what happened? Until Hashem revealed himself to them. And they left Egypt. And they came to Sukkot. And they made ovens. And they baked the matzah. And they ate it. So where did they eat the matzah? They didn't eat it in Egypt. They ate it in Sukkot. So why does the Haggadah tell us? This is the poor bread that our ancestors ate b'Mitzrayim in Egypt, when in fact, the Haggadah itself, the Torah itself says, They baked the dough that they had taken out of Mitzrayim into matzahs. Doesn't say vayochlu es hamatzos asher hotziu mitzrayim. They ate the matzah that they had taken out of Egypt. No, they didn't take matzah out of Egypt. They took dough out of Egypt, and they were in such a hurry they couldn't bake it in Egypt, so they took it as dough. And when they got to Sukkos, they baked it there. So, what is it? It's the dough the matzah they ate in Egypt. Or is it matzah that they ate when they left Egypt? Okay, well, the Torah says explicitly they ate it when they were Egypt. When they left Egypt. Okay, now let's run the numbers here. Anybody that's been to a matzah bakery has probably seen that the one characteristic that you find in every single matzah bakery is that everyone is in a hurry. Why are they in a hurry? Because the problem with baking matzah is once you put the water to the flour, you have a maximum of 18 minutes to turn that into matzah. Otherwise, it becomes chametz. And so to get that done, it takes a lot of effort and care. If it's more than 18 minutes, it's chametz. And that's why comes 17 minutes in the process, they stop the process, they change everything, they wash everything, and they start all over again. Because matzah, water and flour that come into contact and are mixed become chametz very quickly, in 18 minutes. I once heard from a caterer that when they're running the schedule of an event, so this is before one of our dinners. So he said to me, look, he says, if you're just running the schedule, you need to understand that to move several hundred people from the smorgasbord room into the hall where their dinner is, several hundred people, it's a minimum of a half hour. A minimum of a half hour. And anybody that's been to any event knows it. Getting hundreds of Jews to move is not simple, especially if they're leaving dough. Now, what happened here? The Jews know they were leaving Egypt, so they have to prepare food. So they prepared dough, and then God reveals himself to them and says, we're leaving. Moshe says, we're leaving. And so they all gather together from where they are, close to 2 million people, and they come together to Ramses. I don't know how far Ramses was from Goshen, but it wasn't Goshen, it was Ramses. So they had to move from Ramses to Goshen. In Goshen, evidently, they got together as a group, 2 million people. And from Goshen, from Ramses, they left and they marched till Sukkot. Again, I don't have a map. I can't tell you where the biblical Sukkot was, but it was outside of Egypt. And they got into Sukkot. Okay, they're hungry. The first thing they did, wasted no time. The first thing they did is they had to build ovens to bake the matzah. And they built the ovens to bake the matzah, and took the dough and stuck it into the oven and made matzah. In 18 minutes? It's impossible. It must have been hours and hours. How could it not have become chametz? What's this whole story? It makes no sense. But that's what it says. How did it work? How did they possibly how did the dough not rise? Because they had no time to let it rise. That's all it was doing. Yet in a hot desert sun, can you imagine? So that's my next question. And then finally, before we start looking at what the answers are, another question. Last week was Parshas HaChodesh. In Parshas HaChodesh, we read, and I'm just going to give you not all of the psukim, but the relevant ones in Parshas HaChodesh, where Hashem comes to Moshe on the first day of Nisan, and he says to them, this is the first month of the first year, and you speak to the Jewish people and tell them, on the 10th day of the month, each one of them should take a lamb for each household and watch it until the 14th day of the month, and then All of the entire congregation of the Jewish people should slaughter that lamb that afternoon, take from the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel, and then eat it that night, tzli eish, roasted, umatzais al mereirim yechluhu, and they should eat it with unleavened cakes, with matzahs, with bitter herbs. That's how the Korban Pesach was to be eaten in Mitzrayim before they left Mitzrayim. So what are we saying? The reason we eat matzah is because the dough didn't have a chance to rise, and they were in a hurry, and they had to leave quickly, and they couldn't bake it until they got to Sukkot, and that's why they baked it as matzah. They had to eat matzah because Hashem said, eat matzah on the night of the 14th, before they left Mitzrayim, before the whole story happened. 2 weeks earlier, they were already commanded to eat matzah. And interestingly enough, nowhere is that mentioned when we talk about why we eat matzah. Why not? And what is this matzah anyways? And why were they eating matzah before? If the matzah is to commemorate a miracle, the miracle hadn't yet happened. So why eat the matzah? They still hadn't left Egypt. Okay, so let's take a step back and try and understand what this Yom Tif and what this matzah is all about. It is said, I believe in the name of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak Berdichever. Rebbe Yitzchak Berdichever was a giant in the Hasidic movement. He was the second generation from the Baal Shem Tov, known as the Meilitz Yesher Shel Bnei Yisrael. He was the defender par excellence of the Jewish people. He could not see bad in another Jew. It was difficult for him to see bad in another human being. And Yitzchak Berdichever noted an interesting thing. He says, Pesach, that Yom Tif, it has two names really, or two names that are commonly used. One is the one we use, Pesach, and the other one is Chag HaMatzos. The Torah refers to it as Chag HaMatzos. In davening, it's referred to as Chag HaMatzos. In Ya'alav Yavo, it's Chag HaMatzos. But Jews refer to it as Chag HaPesach, Kasher V'Tzameach. It's Chag HaPesach, it's Pesach. He says, why is that? He says, because at its core, this Yom Tif, if we're to sum it up as one thing, it's a Yom Tif of love. It's the Yom Tif that expresses the love between Hashem and the Jewish people, the love that Hashem has for us and that we have for him. And so when Hashem in the Torah talks about this Yom Tif, he talks about it from the perspective of, give a look at what my beloved are willing to do for me. For 8 days, they're willing to eat this matzah. It costs them $27 a pound, and it doesn't even taste good. And yet they'll eat it because they love me. And we call it Pesach, because this is the Yom Tif that Hashem Pasach al Batei B'nei Yisrael. He passed over our houses as he took retribution from those that would oppress us and saved us. He loves us. And that's why we call it Chag HaPesach. In fact, that's why we read Shir HaShirim on Pesach. And I say we, actually in Chabad, we don't do the Megillas on Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, but Jews do. I mean, it's Shir HaShirim is Pesach. Because Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, is the love song that describes the love between Hashem and the Jewish people, the reciprocal love between Hashem and the Jewish people. Let me tell you a story. Actually, coincidentally, it's a story that happened with me and Rebbe Levi Yitzchak Berdichever, even though he lived 200 years before me. Before we moved to Stamford, we were in Amherst, Massachusetts. We started the Chabad house in Amherst. And one of the first things that I did there was make a kosher kitchen on the campus of the university in Amherst. And it was, and still is, set up actually in a really good way. The kosher kitchen is in a building of its own. So I don't really have to worry too much about whether or not, with things getting inadvertently mixed in. And in terms of supervising, I had several observant kids that actually had as part of their work-study assignments, so that they had the job working in the kitchen and acted as my eyes and ears. And I would come into the kitchen once or twice a week just to check to make sure everything is going on okay, that all the products and so on. That was all year long, except one week in the year, and that was Pesach. Because while normally the kitchen served suppers every night for about 70, 80 kids, on Pesach, we served 3 meals a day for about 400. So it was a lot of additional staff and clearly a lot more going on. And I couldn't rely just on others. I had to be there at least 3 times every single day to make sure that stuff works right. And this was every day in Pesach, including the last day of Pesach, and for supper, which was before Shkia, and it was a Pesach supper. On the last night of before I sat down in the Chabad house to do Mashiach's meal, I had to first run off to the campus to make sure that the Pesach is going to be still kosher to Pesach next year also. And I was running through the campus in a hurry, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a couple of kids standing in a corner of a building, in an alcove, and I didn't even pay it much conscious thought, but as I was going by and from a distance, I smelled that what they were smoking there, it wasn't something that you buy in a 7-Eleven, or at least not yet, as far as I know. And then was clearly very illegal, but in Amherst in the 70s was not unusual. And I really didn't give it more than a thought and kept going. When one of the kids that was standing in that group sees me and he calls a rabbi, and he comes running towards me. I stop and I say, what is it? He says, Rabbi, what time is sunset tonight? And I look at him, sunset tonight, what? And then, a little light bulb went off in my head, and he says, you want to buy a beer? And he gives a sheepish grin, yeah. So I told him what time the stars come out and when it's okay to buy a beer. And I keep on going. And I'm reminded of a story with Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev. This happened the first night of Pesach in Berditchev, when the entire community had come to shul it's a Chassidish shul. They said Hallel there. You can imagine what it was like. The shul was packed. Rabbi Yitzchak comes into shul, but instead of going to his place in the front, he goes up onto the bima to make an announcement. And he says, I want everybody to go home and to bring back anything that you have in your homes that full customs duties was not paid on. And by way of background, we're talking about the period when, for Jews, most professions were closed to them. And in Berditchev, there was not a few people that this is what they dealt with. It was the only way to make a living. And Rivka said, I want you to bring everything like that. I want you to bring it to shul. This is what I want you to do. No, the Rebbe says, you got to do it. People went home, started bringing back carpets and tobacco and jewelry and perfumes and silver. It didn't take long in the back of the shul, and Berditchev began to resemble an Oriental bazaar. A while goes by, Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev comes back up onto the bima and he says, this is everything? And I said, yeah, it's everything. So he said, okay, now I want you to go home again. And now I want you to bring all the chametz that you have at home. I said, Rebbe, what? He said, I want you to bring all the chametz that you have in your houses. And I said, Rebbe, chametz, it's Pesach tonight. Who has chametz? He says, no one has chametz. And they looked at him in wonder. Of course not. No one has chametz. It's Pesach. He says, goes down from the bima, walks up to the Aron Kodesh. He opens it up, and he begins addressing the Eibishter. And he says, Melech Malchei Amlachim, King of Kings. Give a look and see what's happening here. The king, our king, he has soldiers, and he has policemen, and he has judges, and he has fines, and he has jails, all to make sure that people obey his laws. And he points to the back of the shul and he says, give a look and see how they obey his laws. He says, you have no judges, you have no policemen, you have no soldiers, you have no jails, you have no fines, nothing. But you tell your people not to have chametz on Pesach, and no one has chametz on Pesach. And I'm thinking to myself, marijuana, shmarijuana, but chametz on Pesach, chas v'shalom. For a beer, you have to wait until sunset. That's the love of a Jew for Hashem. I never saw this kid before. I don't recall ever seeing him again. This was not a Chabad house kid. He wasn't a Hillel kid. He was a Jew. He was a Jew for whom beer on Pesach? No way. At least not until sunset. Why? Because it's that simple matter-of-fact awareness. That is the expression of love that is inherent in every single one of us for him. But it's not a love that we are generally conscious of. When we say the word love, in essence, and without getting into a detailed philosophical or psychological definition of the word, but in those basic terms, love is not about me, but it's about the one who's loved. Most people, when they say, I love, are really saying, I love so-and-so. They're really saying, I love how so-and-so makes me feel. But that isn't real love. Again, to Dr. Twersky, alav hashalom. He used to refer to that as, it's called fish love. It's not real love, it's fish love. What's fish love? You see somebody fishing and he asks, what are you doing? He says, I'm fishing. He says, why are you fishing? He says, because I love fish. So you don't love fish. If you love the fish, you'd throw it back into the water. You wouldn't take it out, kill it, and eat it. You don't love the fish. What you love is the pleasure that the fish, eating the fish, gives you. Real love is not about you. Real love is about the one who is loved. And there's no me in this equation. As far as I'm concerned, all there is the one that's loved. Let me show you something interesting. We have a chametz and we have matzah. Don't break me now. Oops. Two words, chametz and matzah. Take a look at those words. They both share the same two letters, and what differentiates them is one letter. They both have a mem, they both have a tzaddik. One has a ches, and the other has a hey. What's the difference between a ches and a hey? Both of them are sort of almost like individual shelters. The ches, though, is a closed one. The hey is an open one. They both express the person. They're me. The ches, though, is only me. The hey has an opening to higher. It has an opening to more. And that's the difference between chametz and matzah. It's not chametz is about me. Matzah is about higher than me. That's why chametz, I should have had a picture of the difference between chametz and matzah, a bread rises. Why shouldn't it rise? It's me. Matzah is flat because it's not about me. Chametz is tasty. You don't make bread out of flour and water. It has all kinds of other good stuff in it. Matzah is not about me. Flour and water, and let's keep going. We need no more because we have an opening to higher. Let's come back now to where we started. Hashem comes to a people, really a rabble of slaves in Mitzrayim, and he says to them, I want to marry you. I love you. I know who you truly are. And I want to be with you together and forever. That's what a marriage is. And they say yes. Why do they say yes? It's true. They're just a rabble of slaves now, but they weren't always. And they know of the incredible relationship that their ancestors, and not distant ancestors, but all of them knew somebody who knew them. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, Zilpah, and the incredible relationship that they had with Hashem. They knew it for what it was, a relationship of intense love. That's who they were. And now Hashem is offering exactly that relationship to them. This is what I want you to be, like your forefathers were with me. And they say, yes, we want it. And he says, okay. But first, before you come into a relationship with me, you need to drop your other ones. You need to stop being slaves. Because when you're a slave, you're already in a relationship with a master. And that master rarely will let you join another one. You need to stop being slaves. First and foremost, in your own minds. You need to begin to understand that you are free people. And as free people, you can become one with me. Are you up for it? And they say, yes. Okay, says. So here's what I want you to do. Take a lamb, which is an Egyptian deity, and tell the Egyptians that in 4 days, you're going to shecht it, you're going to slaughter it, then you're going to roast it to make sure that they all smell it, and then you're going to eat it. Oh, and I want you to eat it with matzah to make the point that for the first time, you're not eating because you want to, but because I want you to. And you want to do what I want you to do. And that's why with matzah, because what matzah symbolizes is it's not about you. It's about something higher. And that's the lachma anya, the poor bread that they ate in Egypt. It was poor bread. Because sure, they did it because Hashem said so, but by way of analogy, it's like the huge bouquet of flowers that a husband brings home on the night of their anniversary. Now, sure, it's an expression of love. It's a big, beautiful bouquet of flowers. But you all know, we all know, I shouldn't be speaking to the women in the audience, but I think all of the men know in the audience that what that really is that on the way home from work, about a moment before he's about to turn into the driveway, he thinks, it's our anniversary tonight. And it was a screech. The car makes a U-turn. He goes flying off to the florist, throws his credit card down on the table and says, give me the biggest, most beautiful bouquet you have, and marches into the home with this wonderful bouquet. Is it love? Yes, it's love, but it's dangerously close to fish love. It's almost like an act of self-preservation. Imagine if he didn't. So, yes, they ate the matzah because they wanted this. But who wanted it? They wanted it. And they knew what would happen if they didn't. They would disappear. And so they did it to express that love. But then at midnight, something awesome, unprecedented, and unparalleled happened. What happened? Nigla alehem melech malchei hamlochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Gala. God, the King of Kings, revealed himself to them and redeemed them. Now, again, I have no idea what that means. I've never been privy to a revelation of godliness. I don't know what it is. I can't describe it to you. I can just try and understand it. Just read it for what it says. Hashem revealed himself. What does it mean he revealed himself? That even though he's everywhere always, that night, his presence was not just there, but it was manifestly apparent. He, the real he, was there. To use our metaphor, it's the kind of love where you see our beloved's real self, when you see the real loved one, the inner beauty, the sensitivity, the loyalty, the integrity, the selflessness. You see in the face and in the light of that kind of reality, just the brightness of it, there's no me. It's her, him. It's like that breathlessness of where words fail, where feelings are indescribable. They're indescribable because they're not me. I can't describe what isn't me. It's so beyond me. And there's no me there. Because she's there. He's there. Whether it's the love of a spouse, whether it's the love of a parent to a child to a parent, of a student to a teacher to a student, a chassid to a rebbe to a chassid. There's no me. It's not about me. I'm not here. So let's go back to our Haggadah now. And in that light, read it. Matzazu sha'an och. Oh, second. Wrong. When we were in Egypt, we begin the Seder, and what do we say? We start off by saying, Hey lachma anya diachala v'sana ba'ara de Mitzrayim. Here is the poor bread that our ancestors ate in Egypt. In what sense was it poor bread? Because it didn't express what really they could be. You know what it's like? It's like what we have with every mitzvah that we do. We do mitzvahs all year long, every single day. Dozens of mitzvahs every single day, from the moment we wake to the moment we go to sleep. And if we're going to sleep so that we have the kayach to do mitzvahs tomorrow, then even the sleeping is a mitzvah. But ultimately, yes, we do it. Why? We do it because Hashem told us to do it. And therefore, so why are you doing it? Because Hashem told us to do it? Well, he says, very simple. If we do what Hashem wants us to do, then we'll have better lives in this world and unbelievable lives in the next world. But that's a pretty poor relationship. It's, you bring a bouquet and you get a smiling spouse and a great anniversary dinner. But we can do better. It doesn't need to be lachmanya, we say. And therefore, kol dichfin yeseh v'yechel, kol ditzrich yeseh v'yifsach. We're talking to ourselves here. We're talking to everyone around the Seder. Every one of us, we need more. We need to come and eat this Seder. Kol ditzrich, kol dichfin, we're hungry, and we need to satiate that hunger. We are hungry for a deeper and better relationship. We need Pesach so that we can be truly free, not just sometimes. And that's why we say tonight, the next words that we say is what? Manishtana. And in the Ashkenazi tradition, it begins with a Yiddish sentence. Tate, ich will bei dir fragen 4 kashes. Father, I want to ask you 4 questions. Because tonight, Hashem isn't our king. Hashem is our Father. The Father who loves us to the very core of our being. And tonight, he opens up the gates of heaven and in love embraces us to him. And that's the story we tell our children as we go through the Haggadah. And we tell them that story, and we tell the child within us that story, the story that Hashem loves us. And tonight we just need to open our eyes, open our minds, open our hearts, and miraculously, tonight is the night that Hashem will show us that love. And as we go through the Haggadah, stanza after stanza, paragraph after paragraph, page after page, and there aren't all that many, and get to the end of the Haggadah, at that point, we point to the matzah. Now this matzah is a different matzah altogether. What's this matzah? This matzah, why do we eat it? This matzah, it's not about the matzah they ate in Egypt. No, this is something altogether different. Here's what happened. They were putting together dough because they're going on a trip and they need food. What do you take for food? Bread. So they put together dough. And then at midnight, the dough had no time to rise. It doesn't say it doesn't have time to rise until they baked it. It said it had no time to rise until Hashem revealed himself to them. At midnight, Hashem revealed himself to them. And as soon as Hashem revealed himself to them, again, however that manifested itself in this world in reality, but it was a reality. Hashem was revealed here. It's Hashem, the God that loves us, and the very core of Hashem himself, to the very core of our being. What's chametz? Chametz is about me. It couldn't become chametz from that point onwards because Hashem was revealed. And once Hashem is revealed, it doesn't become a chametz anymore. Chametz is about me. There was no me at that point. Sure, hours went by, but it was when Hashem was revealed. They were one with him. The relationship was one, the loved and the beloved as one. And that's why the Zohar calls matzah that we eat now at the Seder, the matzah not that we point at the beginning, but the matzah that we actually eat at the Seder and through Pesach is michla de memnusa. It has the ability to give us, it's the bread of faith. It's the bread that literally nourishes our faith in a real material sense. It has that incredible spiritual quality, because tonight is the night of our love to him, and even greater, of course, than that, his love to us. And that's the love that continues to nourish us until next year, next Pesach, so that we are not the slaves to ourselves, to our desires, to our, whatever it is that any or every one of us might be related, that we have our slavery to our jobs, our slavery to our relationships, our slavery to our to food, whatever it is that people think that they must absolutely have. Gone. No, we're higher than that. We're beyond that. We need to open our eyes. We need to open our hearts. But this night, we can do what we cannot do any other night of the year. The gates of heaven literally are open. He's shining his love so that we can shine ours back. I think that's probably what Shlomo HaMelech meant when he said in Shir HaShirim, Kel Deidi Defek, the Jewish people on this night say, my beloved is knocking. Pischili achesi rayasi, open for me, my sister, my beloved, my dove, my perfect one. And as he stretches his hand through that, I just closed it. And he stretches his hand through that hole in the hay and fills it with his love for us. And in response, we can fill it back with our love to him. That, I think, may be the Kaballah of Pesach. I have a feeling I went way over time. I'm sorry. One thing about Zoom is it doesn't give you a clock on the same screen. But anyways, if there are any questions, I'll be glad to take them.
Rabbi Deren?
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to thank you very much for the beautiful shir. I have such wonderful memories of your very special mother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, in Pittsburgh. Just
yes,
very special. Yeah.
So which Shapiro, as in?
No, I was a Flom in Pittsburgh.
Okay. As in Dr. Flom.
As in Dr. Flom, my dad. Yeah.
Well, then I guess let me say thank you very much for giving me some of your time and spending it with me. Privilege. Rabbi?
Rabbi Deren, thank you so much. Thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for sharing Torah and reminding us of something very, very important, that we are loved. We are loved by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that the night of the Seder is really all about love. It's about Avdus and Cheirus and about Matzah and Chametz, but really it's all about love. Thank you. We wish you and your Kehila and your family a Chag Kosher V'Sameach. It should be a healthy and safe and happy and simchadik Yantif for your entire Kehila, for our Kehila here in Fair Lawn, and for really all of Klal Yisrael. Thank you so much.
You know why we wish people Chag Kosher V'Sameach? Because we're not sure where they're planning on being Pesach. So for the ones that are going to hotels, we wish them Chag Kosher. And for the ones that are staying home, Chag Sameach.
Thank you. Love it. I'm going to steal that one.
By all means, I did. Be well.
Thank you. And it should be Eloi Neshama for Dr. Thaler. We welcome also Eve, I see on the call, and also the Ashkenazes from Connecticut. We miss you, and we hope to see you soon as well. Kol Tov, everyone.
Rebecca and Ari, thank you.
Yasher Koach.